Life. It's just one big story, isn't it?
Hi everybody, welcome to the Story Connection. I'm your host, Donna Wilberg. Well, in our last episode, we were talking with Dena Freeman, who grew up on Alcatraz Island, and we've got so much more to share. So I'm so happy you could join us. Dena, you've got so many stories under your belt and so many that I've heard personally that I just absolutely love. So I'm so delighted that you're here with us today to share. Let's go back to kind of when you first got on the island. You were 8 years old,
right? And
you talked about the lighthouse. Some of the things that you were so fascinated with was the lighthouse and some of the other fun things you did as a kid.
Oh well, that was Alcatraz, and being 8 years old was the very first time in my whole life when I got to see Santa Claus. And the Women's Club on Alcatraz put a Christmas party on for the kids. Mm-hmm. And typically, we do the Christmas caroling and we end up going down to the social hall, which is down around here. And the social hall is a great big hall, as you can tell, mm-hmm. with hardwood floors that are wonderful to dance on, and it has a stage with curtains and the whole schmear. And so typically at Christmas time, they do the whole picture of the birth of Jesus and the wise men and those Christmas stories. And then when the Christmas story has been presented, then Santa Claus comes.
Oh, exciting.
And my first year, Santa Claus came, and they set up a throne for him to sit on and little stairs for us to walk up so we could sit on his lap. And you had to sit on his lap based upon your height. So the little tiny kids went first, and then the bigger kids, and then the grade school kids. And when it was my turn, I had to check him out because I had only seen Santa Claus in ads about buying Camel cigarettes. I had never seen a real live Santa Claus. And this little guy had ruddy cheeks and little short red complected fingers, and a big belly that didn't need to be padded, and was just an amazing, amazing man. And so I asked him, the one thing that I wanted the very most in my life was a mother who would love me. Oh. And Santa Claus said, not this year, but someday. And with that, I got down. And when everybody was through, then they came to get Santa Claus, and he told them he had to go because he was on his way to the North Pole. And so I ran to the social hall door, and they loaded Santa Claus into a pickup truck, and they took him up to the lighthouse. And so then I knew that Santa Claus lived in the lighthouse on Alcatraz.
Oh, what a beautiful story. That's just beautiful. You had some other fun things that you were doing. Tell us about your little roller skating excursions. We have some footage to show of that.
Oh, dear. So before the break in 46, they used to unlock the gates when the inmates were all locked in. Uh-huh. So at 5:30 in the evening, the gates would be unlocked, and we could go outside the gate.
Okay, well,
and
let's take a look. We actually have footage that we could show.
Did you hear the story about the roller skating?
Tell us about the roller skating.
Okay, so we'd put on our roller skates about here,
Uh-huh.
and then we'd start down the hill, and you can't go very far without falling over, so you have to squat down on your butt and hold your legs and skate, and about halfway, you'd fall over. Yeah.
That's a long way down.
And we do it
You're
all over
lucky you
again.
didn't break your neck.
Yeah, yeah. That's probably the reason I have a crack in my butt today.
That's another story. Well, we're going to take you to another place where you actually, and this horrified me, as a mother, I could just imagine, where you slid down the stairs in boxes.
In a cardboard, in a wooden box.
Okay.
A wooden box. So these are the stairs
Uh-huh.
that I used to try to ride orange crates down.
Oh, no. Really?
I got to tell you, you can't do it successfully. I tried and
That
tried.
looks impossible.
Well, look at it
How
over here.
steep they are. My goodness. You know what really, it's remarkable that you're still here to talk about these things.
Look at them.
Oh no, Dena.
Isn't that amazing?
Oh my gosh.
So the canteen was right there in that bottom building,
Uh-huh.
and they used to throw the orange crates and the wooden boxes that produce came in,
Uh-huh.
right out there. So we'd go down, we'd get an orange crate, and we'd bring it up here to the top
No.
and try to ride it down.
Didn't it roll?
Well, actually, it topples.
Gosh. Those are pretty steep stairs.
But you do it again and again.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if I wanted to meet my dad when he got off work,
Uh-huh.
I would wait for him by the gate down there.
Way down there?
Way down there.
Oh my goodness.
Now the steps, these steps are even, but some of the steps were built unevenly on purpose so that people couldn't run down them in a hurry. The unevenness was made to keep prisoners from escaping.
Okay, so this is another staircase.
Look at those.
So this one all the way down
This
as well?
is a garden.
Oh,
Right.
very
Well,
nice. Let's talk about the prison break of '46. But before we talk about that, I want everybody to see what the inside of the cell block looks like for those of you who have never been on the island.
So when we go to the inside of the cell block now, it's because we're visiting. And when we visit Alcatraz as the group, because those of us who grew up there get together the second weekend in August of every year, we get to go to the cell block and we have breakfast there, usually prepared by one of the volunteer groups of the rangers, and then we can go through the cell block. But those of us who live there are really not that interested in the cell block.
Yeah.
Because that's where our dads worked, and that was a far, far distant from our thoughts. We just never occurred to us. In the early years, 46, 47, 48, we would have movies up there every other Sunday night. The inmates would have a movie during the daytime, and then in the evening, they would let the families go up and see the movies in what was the inmate chapel. However, they began to decide that wasn't too safe, and so we began having movies in the social hall. Yeah. But otherwise, we just did not go in the cell block.
Yeah.
So visitors get to see the cell block, and most of us who live there make it through once, and we don't go back again.
What was it like for you the first time that you went into the cell block? I mean, growing up there and knowing that it existed, but you had never been in there. What was that like for you?
We were totally unaware of how dangerous those inmates were. We knew, because we heard our fathers explain, that the reason for Alcatraz was to keep people from breaking out. Because Alcatraz was developed soon after Al Capone, because the gang would break prisoners out of other prisons. And so with Alcatraz, the mafia couldn't get there to break prisoners out. We were totally unaware of how dangerous those guys were. So when our dads went to work, we had no idea where they were going to work. And on Alcatraz, the officers don't carry guns. The only guns are in the towers. The guys who are working side by side with the inmates don't carry guns. And we knew that.
Yeah.
But
well, let's talk about the prison break, because that was kind of a real eye-opener for the children.
So the prison break happened on a Thursday afternoon. And we had all gone to the dock. We were waiting for the boat. And when the boat came, our 3:30 boat, they wouldn't let the kids on it. So then we went over to the Cox, which was parked there, and made the trip to Angel Island. It was a big ferry boat. And they wouldn't let us on the Cox either. Now we knew something was wrong, but we had no idea what. The women began to come home from work to catch the 5 o'clock boat, and we began to see that the women were getting concerned too. And then Mrs. Bergen was listening to the radio and explained to us that they were having difficulties on Alcatraz, and the children wouldn't be able to go home until the difficulties were over. So about 6:30, 7 o'clock, Mrs. Bergen called the Red Cross. And the Red Cross sent a big school bus size vehicle to the dock, and everybody who lived on Alcatraz who couldn't go home got in the bus. And so they took us to Compton's cafeteria, and the only thing Compton's had to eat was onion soup.
Oh my goodness.
And none of us were hungry enough to eat onion soup, so we ended up eating milk and crackers because that was available. And then we stayed at some Howard Street hotel, which probably wasn't a very high-class hotel, where we slept 5 in a bed, and I think 3 of the 5 people I was sleeping with wet the bed.
Oh, jeez.
And the next day, the Red Cross bus picked us up early and took us to the top of the Mark. And we got breakfast at the Mark Hopkins Hotel.
Oh my goodness.
Post toasties, it was wonderful. And then the Red Cross got us clean underwear, so we were issued room numbers and people to supervise the rooms. And there were like 2 or 3 kids to a room with a working mother who supervised us. And after we changed clothes and took a shower, but before they took us to our schools, they had us sit in a couch at the foot of the stairs of the Mark Hopkins, where the Red Cross had arranged for the reporters to interview us. And by that time, a couple of us knew that Herbie Steitz's dad had been killed, and Herbie was a part of our group and was my age. And we didn't want the reporters hassling Herbie. And by that time, the Miller kid's dad had been killed too. And there were 2 of those kids in our group. And so we became really cantankerous and not well-behaved children that the Red Cross wanted to show the public. So soon after the reporters gave up getting stories or pictures of us, we were then taken to our schools in a Red Cross van and picked up after school by the same van. Big dinner on Friday evening. And you know how it was in those days, no meat. We all ate fish whether we wanted to or not. Yeah. And then on Saturday, they took us to the YWCA. And on Sunday morning, we got to go to Mass at St. Bridget's Church, because that's where most of the Catholic kids went. And those of us who didn't have a church went there anyway just because. And around noontime, they said, you'll be able to go home this afternoon. And so we were taken to the dock in the same great big bus. And about 3 o'clock, we went home that Sunday. And when I got home, I found bullet holes in my little cottage where I live with my dad. And he didn't get home until I had been home for quite a while.
Wow, that had to be scary.
And he was exhausted,
Yeah.
just exhausted. And I don't think that we realized what harm our dads were in at that time. And so, yeah, that part of it was scary. I think the fact that I had been in a lot of foster homes made that part less scary for me and made it easier for me to take care of my friends who were frightened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, you had mentioned in one of the stories that you had written that actually the other guards took care of the families of the men who were shot.
Yes. Betsy Stites had not finished high school, and the Stites, there were 4 kids in the Stites family. And Betsy had no relationships on the West Coast. They had come from Pennsylvania or someplace like that. So the Officers Club made a collection, and they collected well over $6,000, and they divided that between the 2 families, because at that time, life insurance was not a regular thing.
Yeah.
And so the Millers were given their money, and they went back east where they had family. And for the Stites family, the Officers Club bought property in Santa Rosa and built Betsy a home for her children, a 3-bedroom, 1-bath home on Stony Point Road, in Santa Rosa. And we went there in the summertime, and we camped out at a tent while the dads built the property and built barns and that kind of thing. So, yeah, it was nice. They gave them that money, and that helped them get their footing.
That's a really proud piece of Americana history, you know, that you don't really hear a whole lot about.
True.
Yeah,
True.
the things that people used to do,
take care of people.
Yeah, take care of, you know, their friends and neighbors and coworkers and whatnot. Beautiful story. Well, we have a couple photos of you bowling, and you mentioned, you know, as a teenager you had a place to hang out. Let's talk a little bit about that before we run out of time.
We're going to go down here, and over on the right-hand side there are several areas where they have pictures of things that happened and people who lived here at that time, and a lot of memorabilia. We weren't supposed to be down here as kids at all, ever. So of course we came down. And there's our ballet dancers. I should be in that one. Do you see my butt?
I don't know, there's not much of it left, you know. I'm sure you've had it chewed on it.
And there's my dad.
Oh my goodness. Oh.
And that's the social hall when it was intact. So we had a bowling league, and the bowling alley we had to recreate. It had been a bowling alley during the time that the military had it, and we had that social hall the whole time, and downstairs people got curious. So we went down there, and lo and behold, downstairs from the social hall was a 2-lane bowling alley.
Wow.
There were 3 different pool tables. And a little bit of had to be a soda fountain because they wouldn't have alcohol on Alcatraz, not a good combination. And so we developed a bowling teams, and the teams would compete with each other. And one of the ways I made money was I would set pins because we didn't have an automatic pin setter. Made better money setting bowling pins than I did babysitting. And it's amazing getting those pins right on that spot. Yeah. So it was fun. And most of the kids bowl. And most of us did pretty well at bowling.
So as a teenager and dating, were you allowed to go on dates? Did you take the boat? Did you take the boat across? Was there certain times it left?
Yes.
You know, was there a curfew? I have so many questions.
So most of the kids on Alcatraz dated the other kids on Alcatraz.
Yeah, probably easier.
And I found that after a while kind of cramped my style. So initially, my first real boyfriend was Eddie Falk, who went to Winfield Scott School with me, and we went through the train tunnel when we weren't supposed to, and we did all kinds of things that yes, it was a fascinating, the things that boys and girls do to each other at that age. We threw rocks at each other on the way to school and on the way home, and he was a pretty good aim. And when we held hands on the back of the boat, we would cover our hand holding with books or something, because holding hands was pretty risque.
Yeah.
And then my next boyfriend was Robert Ledwith. And Robert, interesting guy, an only child, not many of those on Alcatraz, and he loved to play basketball. And the main reason that I think I made him my boyfriend was because he was so socially awkward. And by him being my boyfriend, he was more acceptable to the rest of the group. So one evening, Robert and I went out to the bench with the other kids. The bench was the makeout place.
Ah.
And so there we were on the bench. We could also smoke out there. And we were smoking and talking with our friends, and all of a sudden Robert's mother's voice could be heard. And he was not supposed to be there.
Uh-oh.
And he was not supposed to be with girls. And so we hid. We hopped down off the bench and climbed over the wall and hid behind plants. And his mother walked out and said, "Oh, my heart, my heart." And we were afraid she was going to have a heart attack, so we admitted that he was there, and he got up and she dragged him home with her. And within weeks had him enrolled in a Gloria Day school, over a Lutheran school over in Oakland somewhere, so that he would only come home every other weekend.
Ah.
She was going to protect him from me.
Wow.
And he grew up to be a wonderful guy.
Well, you know, and you're a wonderful person. How many foster kids?
22.
22 foster kids.
Yeah.
That's amazing. There's a story in that too, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
You know? But I mean, you know, to come full circle from the circumstances and all the things that you had been through, and to foster 22 kids, that's just amazing.
It was wonderful.
And I'm sure you're just as good a parent as your dad was.
You know, the children that were raised in our house have grown up to be wonderful people.
Yeah.
And I am just so pleased with them. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. It's remarkable, and I'm so pleased that you were able to come on the show and tell it to me and my audience, because you don't hear the story from very many people. How many are in your alumni?
So we started with a great big group, and we're now down to about 30 people.
30 people.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great.
And because people were on the island and then gone, and because they worked in every federal prison in the United States, pardon me, sometimes we get more people, but I expect in August when we go to the dinner that there will be about 30 of us there.
Okay. Well, we have a photo of some of the alumni that we're gonna
Yes.
show you. We're gonna put up.
Good, good.
Yeah.
So-
Anything you want to say about the photo?
The one thing I want to say is that one of the fun things about growing up on Alcatraz is I used to babysit this woman
Wow.
when she was a diaper baby. And she has now grown up and has grandchildren of her own. And it is so nice to run into, not many people do that.
Yeah.
few of us get to run into the kids that were babies when we were teenage babysitters.
Yeah.
And yet for Alcatraz, we got to do that.
I think, smaller communities, when you bond like that, you do keep in touch, and it does allow you to bring everything together.
Yes.
So we have to wrap up right now, and thank you again, Dena. It's been a blast. Loved the whole story. So thank you so much for coming on the show. And everybody, Ted and Lisa and Greg, thank you so much for volunteering your time to put the show together. So when we're out there asking, what's your story? Hope it's a good one. I hope you're willing to share with us, because that's what we're all about. So thank you again, and good night.
The Story Connection airs the second and fourth Thursday at 9:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Our companion show, Paranormal Connection, airs the first and third Thursdays of each month. Each episode repeats the following Friday at 1:30 p.m. and Saturday at 5:30 a.m. Watch these programs online at the same airtimes by going to accesssacramento.org and clicking Watch 17. In the Sacramento region, you can see us on Comcast Channel 17 and on AT&T Channel 99. You can find previously aired shows on the Story Connection YouTube channel. For information on upcoming shows and previous Story Connection guests, go to storyconnectiontv.blogspot.com. You can contact us at storyconnectiontv@gmail.com, and don't forget, find us on Facebook, become a friend, and become a fan.